State of the Sun Devils with Jeremy Schnell, Jesse Morrison, and Mitch Baraldis, an Arizona Sports podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into this edition of State of the Sun Devils. No Jeremy this week. It's a big week for Jeremy, Jesse.
He's getting married, yes.
He's getting married. We're both excited for him, so of course he's taking the week off.
We'll both be there.
We will both be there. I think you're going to be a big part of the wedding too, right?
I am a groomsman, correct.
Yeah, so this is going to be an exciting weekend for us. Of course, an exciting weekend for ASU Hoops as well, because it's rivalry week. We'll get into that momentarily, because we have to start with the fact that they were able to finally end what seemed like this endless losing skid against Utah, Jesse.
Yes, they were finally able to win. What I was really impressed with in this game against Utah is Jose Perez, because just less than a week, well, actually exactly a week before the game on Saturday, he was benched for the second half. And then he came out on Saturday against Utah and had 21 points, one of his best games of the season. And I was just really impressed with what he was able to do.
It's good for him to recover the way he did, because he was dealing with the injury. They were working him back off of the bench. And then he kind of he was getting a majority of the bench minutes, but he wasn't getting the starting role as a result of him trying to return and him trying to get back to that Jose Perez form. So yeah, against Utah was a really nice bounce back for him. I like the big play as of late as well. Like Sean Phillips has had a really good couple of games. Bryant Salabonge as well. The problem that I'm facing is Frankie Collins put it out there after the Utah win, don't give up on us, or something to that ilk. He said don't give up on us on his X account.
Yeah.
But they have 12 losses, Jesse. With the amount of games they have left, which is not many, their only path to an NCAA tournament bid at this point is to win out the Pac-12. And I just don't see it at this point.
Yeah, I don't see it either. However, what they're going to have to do is get hot at the right time.
Right.
And this is the time to start rattling off some wins. And then they're going to have to win the conference tournament, which, in my opinion, every team is super beatable except for U of A. So they would just have to get over the U of A hump, in my opinion, because they can play with pretty much anybody else in the conference on a good day. And then, yeah, they would have to go and run the table in the Pac-12 tournament. They're probably not even going to get a bye in the Pac-12 tournament anymore.
No.
So it's going to have to, it would be really, really tough for them to make it. And then they would end up in Dayton again.
I mean, we've got the standings right now. So Arizona is at the top. They're 10-3 in the conference. Washington State, you mentioned teams that just get hot at the right time. The Cougars were very much a team that got hot at the right time. They're in second at 9-4. Then you've got Oregon and UCLA tied at 8-5. Beneath them, Colorado and Stanford at 7-6. Utah, Arizona State, and California are all 6-7. So we're going to see some breakup there. Washington is at 5-8, and then at the bottom of the conference at 3-10, both Oregon State and USC. And they're probably going to end up with one of those middle seeds again in this tournament. At least is how it looks right now, which means they're going to have to face someone equal in the first round. So I expect a win in that regard if they're playing someone close to them in terms of record-wise. But after that, I just don't know. I don't know.
They've got to play down the stretch like they did on Saturday. 42 rebounds to Utah's 39, and they had 10 turnovers to Utah's 13. When ASU can out-rebound their opponent and get more turnover or force more turnovers than they give up turnovers, then they have success. I would love to see more ball movement. They had 13 assists to Utah's 23. But I don't think we're going to get that. I think this is just how their offense is going to play. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that they've got to follow that script. They've got to attack the glass. They've got to make sure that they're forcing those turnovers. Frankie Collins, again, had an amazing game turnover-wise or steal-wise, 3 more steals for him. He is, gunning for the ASU record, maybe even the Pac-12 single-season record and steals. He's been a terrific defender this season. And, they've got to ride him and they've got to ride Jose Perez. Because those are the two, consistent players other than that little stretch for Perez they've been the two most consistent players on this team this season.
So they have Oregon State tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday morning.
Correct.
So if you're listening to this after Wednesday night's game, the result of that obviously will play into how the rest of this week will go. But they have Oregon State tonight at home. Very winnable game for Arizona State.
Yep.
And a much needed win because this weekend is their first game against U of A this year. Now, they've been in the same building as U of A and have they obviously didn't directly watch it because their game was prior in that footprints in the Jerry Colangelo Classic.
Not a good game for ASU.
Not a good game for ASU. It was a pretty strong showing by Arizona.
Yep.
And it's a weird Arizona team, and what I mean by that is they've had 3 really weird conference losses this year that show the weaknesses that Arizona has had this year. Like they're the number 5 team in the country right now, but the losses that they've had have really shown the weak side of this Arizona team.
Yeah, I really question them being at number 5 in the country just based off of the strength of this conference, and this is not me being biased toward ASU or whatever. It's just based off of the strength of this conference. Whoever's in the top of the Pac-12 right now, like, have you looked at the rest of the conference voters? It's one of those things that makes me think that, like, the voters aren't really watching West Coast games and they're voting based off of, pedigree and, oh, it's Arizona. They're 19-5. They're leading the Pac-12. Okay, here we go. But yeah, are they really better than UNC, Kansas, Tennessee, Duke? I really don't. I don't know.
Kansas had the tough loss on Monday, of course. That didn't count into this week's poll, of course, because it's released on the Monday morning. But I think at the same time, voters are a little more believing in what Arizona can do, I guess, than in terms of, as you mentioned, UNC and Kansas. But I agree with you about the state of the conference. I wonder if it's one of these conferences it'll look stronger than it did during the year when the year is done. You know what I mean? Because Washington State went on a run, and now they're right behind U of A for the first seed in the Pac-12. Oregon started off super duper hot. Now they've kind of mellowed out. You know what I mean? Like, I think this conference is going to look a little bit stronger when we're all said and done. But yeah, I agree with you right now. It doesn't look that strong.
Yeah, and I mean, they have the one team in the top 25.
Yeah.
Which just doesn't look strong. And if they don't even have more than one team in the top 25 going into the tournament, like, that's a big stain on the conference. And obviously it's going away. Or kind of going away.
We have an update on that in just a moment if you keep listening.
But like, I think number 5 for the Pac-12 leader right now is a bit of a stretch. Like, you've got a 21-3 South Carolina team and a much better SEC. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm just a bit confused as to what the voters are voting on, just based off of U of A lost to Oregon State. Like, Oregon State is not a good team this season. Like, they have shown that they're not a good team this season. So, I think that this is going to be a pretty down year for the Pac-12. I don't see U of A as this great team. I think that they're really missing Tuelis from last season. I think he was their best player, and they haven't really replaced him. Even as much as he's annoying, Kirk Risa kind of gave them a bit of a spark.
They were hoping to get that out of Kylan Boswell this year, and they've had it for 75% of the games, but then the other 25% where he's not on, it's very evident how much they need him. And they need his presence.
For sure.
I have to complain.
Okay.
Because if I'm not mistaken, traditionally speaking, rivalry week is always the only game that the teams play during the week, correct?
Usually.
So why did the schedule makers give Washington against Arizona State a solo week? And then we've got this little Oregon State appetizer tonight leading up to Arizona on Saturday in Tucson. What happened to my Pac-12? I mean, a lot has happened to my Pac-12. But what happened to traditionalism? What happened to just the single rivalry match being the only game for those teams during the week? I hate this. I hate this so much.
They have 2 off days between games. To me, it's just not that big of a deal. Like, it doesn't bother me that much. And your argument about tradition, we threw tradition out like probably a decade ago when the original Big East, like, or not even the original Big East, but like the Big East that had South Florida in it, kind of became the American, and then some Big East schools stayed and made a basketball conference that has other sports. Like, that's when tradition, I think, started to die. And then this past year or two, like, tradition is to be damned these days in college sports. I think if it was a Thursday, Saturday, I'd be a little bit more upset, but they have a Wednesday, Saturday, and it's a night game on Saturday, so it just doesn't really bother me too much. You got to be ready to play. This is a Wolfleyism. Like, you've just got to be ready to go, and you got to do your job and show up and play to your best ability in either game. I don't think it really matters when they are, who they're against.
I just miss the old ways, man. I miss when it was the one game and it was on the Saturday, and that's when it was. I looked ahead at the schedule, by the way. I'm pretty sure that the U of A game against Arizona State that's in Tempe is on a Wednesday. And it's the only game for that week.
Okay.
Does my gripe about the scheduling still hold? Because I just find that
it's fine to me. I don't really care that much about it. Like, it just doesn't really bother me.
So, busy weekend for the State of the Sun Devils crew, so we won't be able to do a reaction pod after the first Territorial game, but we will be back next week in order to react to how ASU did, not only against Arizona, but tonight against Oregon State as well, and maybe their fortunes will be different.
Yep.
We teased it just a couple of minutes ago, but there is some significant change happening with the Pac. Can we still call it 12?
Pac-2?
I saw it first from John Wilner, but many other outlets have reported the same. John Wilner, who's with the San Jose Mercury News, had said that the conference, the Pac-12, is working on formally separating itself from Commissioner George Kliavkoff. They plan to name Teresa Gould as the replacement. She currently serves as the deputy commissioner. But, just in time, right? To separate themselves from George Kliavkoff, right?
So I'm just so confused by this because I thought, like, Oregon State and Washington State were trying to separate themselves from the Pac-12 too. Mm-hmm. Why are they appointing a deputy commissioner? Is that just for the rest of this academic year? Like,
yeah,
the Pac-12's not going to be around unless something happens drastically that changes things in the next few months, and like they merge with the Mountain West and call themselves the Pac-12.
Well, maybe that's part of their last-ditch effort is we're going to appoint somebody else. We're going to see if we can get some sort of a merge deal done or some sort of a, hey, can you adopt us deal done? Because, right, to your point, once this calendar year ends, this conference is gone, like, officially. I think there's a rule that requires you to have a certain amount of member schools in order to sustain viability as a conference. So it feels like a last-ditch effort almost.
Do you know when you get to an older age and there's still rec baseball?
Yeah.
And there's the two teams that play each other every week.
Yep.
They should just do that, and it'll just be Washington State, Oregon State that just play each other over and over and over again.
So the other interesting piece that I found from Wilner's report, there was an official statement from the conference, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but what I took away from it the most was there was an invitation of the departing schools to release a statement. And I wanted to ask you, or I wanted to brainstorm this a bit. One, would Arizona State find any reason or have any reason to release a statement on this separation?
No.
And two, if they did, what would they even say at this point? Like, is it an opportunity to just bash the leadership even further? Like, what would they say if they were to release a statement at all? I don't know.
We're sorry that we're leaving, and George did a job that was bad. I don't know. Like,
it's just
that's like, I don't know what you would say. Like, why are they inviting schools to release a statement? I've never heard that before.
I just wonder if they want to feel like they're giving the schools an opportunity to say what the conference was thinking the whole time, or want to defend the integrity of the conference itself and separate it entirely from the leadership in charge. But we've talked about this ad nauseum. That goes back to Larry Scott when he was the commissioner of the conference. It's not all George Kliavkov's fault, but he's kind of the fall guy as a result.
Larry Scott, whoever they were consulting with at the universities that wanted a $50 million per year deal.
Surfer Professor Bro, right?
Surfer Professor Bro, yep, exactly. You'd have to go back and listen to find that character. I don't know what you would say here other than we're disappointed in the leadership of George Kliavkov and his improper evaluations of things, or that he gave certain people power to improperly evaluate the schools in the conference. It just to me it doesn't make much sense. Why would you release a statement? I mean, if anything, you could release just a long statement saying, starting in this year, Larry Scott became commissioner. He started this bad network that not that many people get, and then they transitioned to George Kliavkov, hoping to salvage things, and he didn't get it either. So there you go. That's that. There's a statement for you right there. But why would you say that?
Yeah, exactly. So, wanted to pass along that news. Doubt anything happens in terms of whether it would save the Pac-12 or not. But it is interesting that it took him this long to decide, we're going to separate ourselves from the commissioner who watched 10 member schools just depart. Let's talk about hockey. A sweep over the weekend. They've moved from 18 now up to 17 in the latest college rankings. Shout out to Gibson Homer, who got a shutout in the first game. His first ever NCAA shutout. He got 37 saves against Alaska Fairbanks as well.
Wow.
Really strong showing for Homer. And then I think he followed it up with another 30-plus save performance. They outscored Alaska Fairbanks 6-2. So very strong on defense, and then a lot of shots enough shots offensively that got past the goaltender to get through.
These past 2 weeks have been really good for ASU hockey. Even the game against Lindenwood, where it was just, I was there.
The brawl, right?
It was just fighting for basically the entire game. It was ridiculous. I've never seen that many penalties and that many ejections in a hockey game in my life. But yeah, I mean, they've won 4 in a row if you count the overtime win against Lindenwood. This is what they needed to do, because they had that really, really bad stretch in January where they were losing games, and it looked like they might fall out of the top 20 and might not make the tournament. Right now, I think they're pretty solidified, and number 17 in the country. I don't see why they wouldn't make the tournament.
They're also one of 6 teams in the top 20 to get to the 20-win mark. They got their 20th win on Saturday.
Big.
So to be in that collection of teams as we're approaching the final couple months here, it's really important for ASU to maintain that. They have this week off, so no hockey this week, but then they're going to head to Fairbanks, Alaska to take on this same Alaska Fairbanks team in their part of the woods next weekend. So no hockey this week, but then they'll be back at it next weekend. Let's switch to women's hoops. Not the best showing against the LA schools this weekend, and Juju Watkins is starting to go on a heater right now with the amount of points that she's scoring. Any takeaways that you had in particular from the 2 losses?
Just Juju Watkins is really good. Even when she has a poor shooting night, she somehow messes around and gets 30 points. She's 1 for 5 from 3 in that game on Friday. And then, UCLA is a really good team. So, they got a couple conference wins this season. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
You just kind of hope for 1 or 2 more this year for ASU women's basketball.
And looking at the standings right now, because they will, of course, partake in the Pac-12 tournament in a couple of weeks, they're tied with Oregon at 2-10 in conference play. And then they're taking on the Washington schools this weekend, who are also in the bottom 5 of the conference. So maybe you can...
Bottom 5 in the conference, though, in the Pac-12 for women's basketball is, not that bad.
Yeah. It's,
But they did beat Washington earlier this year, so...
Washington overall is 13-10. Washington State overall is 15-10. But each of them have 3 wins for Washington, 4 wins for Washington State in the conference. This is historically one of the better conferences in women's college basketball.
Yes, and... they can beat Washington State because Washington State's best player, Charlize Ledger-Walker, she's out for the season. Unfortunate injury for her, but they have it's a more beatable team now. So they could get a sweep this weekend easily, but Jaylen Brown continues to be a really, really good player for them. But you never know.
They got the Washington schools. They start on Friday, and then the other one is on Sunday of this weekend. Those aren't the only events going on in ASU athletics this weekend, and I know you and I are both excited for what's happening today in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
But for college baseball and for Willie Bloomquist's club, they start this weekend, baby, hosting Santa Clara at Phoenix Muni.
I have a little bit of a rant about this.
Oh.
If you're driving by Phoenix Muni, there's a sign, a marquee out there that says Road to Omaha begins February 16th. How about they focus on the tournament first? Like, every time I drive by that, I laugh because ASU baseball has been down for a few years now. Mm-hmm. And to say the Road to Omaha starts February 16th, let's just hold our horses there and make sure that they get to the tournament first before we're saying Road to Omaha begins February 16th.
The first Bloomquist season, it was very much down. The second Bloomquist season, so last year, was a vast improvement from the year prior.
Yes.
And they came, a few games, a few percentage points, I'm air quoting for those watching on video, away from getting a regional spot. They wouldn't have hosted, obviously, but a chance to be in a regional. So
yes.
I think that this is an opportunity for Bloomquist to show that he's really growing this program. And ASU historically has been a very competitive baseball team.
Yes, historically. But again, let's not assume that they're going to Omaha.
Sure. All right. You don't want to get us that.
And if you're not a college baseball fan, Omaha is where they have the College World Series for men's college baseball.
There's also the Pac-12 baseball tournament, which was introduced just last year, and they're going to have their second and final one this year later in Arizona. So maybe one that we can check out.
I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure they're having the inaugural Pac-12 softball tournament this year.
I think so, yeah.
Inaugural, but also first and last. So there you go.
Speaking of softball, we failed to mention last week, but they kicked off their season as well. It started really rainy. I think the first game of the Kajikawa Classic had to get rained out and then postponed to a different day. But softball's underway too. Another year with Megan Bartlett trying to regroup that club after Trisha Ford took the separate job away from Arizona State. They're getting there. They've got a nice young crop of players that she's brought in, but wasn't the best season last year. Maybe they can turn things around for the better this year.
They play Virginia Tech this weekend.
Oh, I know you're excited about that, then.
I am. I will do my best to be there.
Total events this weekend for ASU, Thursday through Sunday, 24 different ASU athletic events this weekend, and that includes water polo, that includes gym, that includes wrestling. There's a lot of great events going on in ASU athletics that are happening this weekend, some of them here. So if you get the chance, go out and support your Devils. Especially baseball. We love baseball. Pitchers and catchers reported today.
Yes, baseball is my favorite sport. Not necessarily at the college level, but baseball is my favorite sport. At the college level, I would go football or men's and women's basketball.
You like the wood bats over the aluminum?
Yes, that's the problem. It's the bats. It's really the bats to me. It's like it doesn't sound right.
I get it. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of State of the Sun Devils. If you like what you heard, maybe you can find us on YouTube, and then you'll like what you watch. The Arizona Sports YouTube channel is where you can find not only content from every State of the Sun Devils podcast, but content from every show during the week, as well as the other great podcasts that we have here at Arizona Sports. If you like this podcast, give us 5 stars, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or find us on the Arizona Sports app or arizonasports.com. Follow us on all of our socials, which is X/Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads.
We have Threads.
I don't know if I did that as well as Jeremy, but here we are. At AZ Sports Devils is all of those platforms' handles. And, of course, if you like us, Jesse is at Morse Code.
Yep.
Spelled funkily.
Yeah, MORRSCODE _ on Twitter, and just Morse Code on Instagram.
And then I'm Swing and a Mitch, because nobody would be able to spell my last name if I gave it to them. So Swing and a Mitch, play on words. I told you I liked baseball.
What's your Instagram?
Mitch says hey.
Okay.
Or reverse hey Mitch. because Hunger Games was big when I made that handle. And that's going to do it. We'll catch you guys next week.